أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Continuing on with the Prophet ﷺ's legendary government military legacy, the era of Sayyidina Umar ibn Al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, now entering into our 40th video of his era after completing a total of 50 videos of the era of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the legendary legacy militarily of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and 30 videos of the military career of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the same channel. Now continuing on, page number 89 in volume 2 of the current biography. Umar's word, were it not for the need for caution, the way to deal with them would be clear. In other words, those that were discussing or slandering Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas mean that they were ignorant wrongdoers, and it was obvious that Sa'd was innocent of what they attributed to him. But caution for the sake of the Ummah necessitated warding off fitna and nipping it in the bud before it got any worse and led to trouble, division, and maybe fighting. If the accused person was innocent of what was attributed to him, then nothing would harm him once he had been proved innocent, so proven innocence of the accusations against him. They understood governorship as a burden, not an opportunity. It was a duty for which they hoped for reward from Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. Being appointed in charge of any of the Muslims' affairs is a kind of righteous deed for the one who fears Allah Jalla Jalaluhu and seeks His pleasure alone and in the hereafter. If this deed becomes a source of fitna, wisdom dictates that one should not continue in it, as was the case here. Excuse me. This is what Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu did when he relieved Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas of his post and appointed his deputy, who was trusted by Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. Umar kept Sa'd in Al-Madinah and approved of the man whom Sa'd nominated to succeed him in Kufa. Thus Sa'd became one of Umar's consultants in Al-Madinah. Then he nominated him as one of his 6 candidates for the Caliphate when he was stabbed, and he urged the Caliph who succeeded him to appoint Sa'd as a governor and said, I did not dismiss him for something bad, but I fear that his reputation might be tarnished because of that. 3.2.2 Complaints against Amr ibn al-As, the governor of Egypt. Umar kept a strict watch on Amr ibn al-As, and the Caliph intervened in the affairs of the province on occasion. When Amr ibn al-As had a minbar made for himself, he wrote to him saying, I have heard that you have acquired a minbar to raise yourself above the heads of the Muslims. Is it not sufficient for you that you stand with the Muslims at your feet? I insist that you should break it. Amr ibn al-As feared Umar's checking on him. He knew how keen Umar was that justice should be established among the people and that the limits set by Sharia be adhered to. So he did his utmost to ensure that no news reached Umar ibn al-Khattab which would please him. An example of that occurred when Abdurrahman ibn Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu and another man drank something without realizing that it was an intoxicant, and they became intoxicated. Then they came to Amr bin As and asked him to carry out the had punishment on them. Amr rebuked them and threw them out. And Abdurrahman said to him, if you do not do it, I will tell my father. And Amr said, I realized that if I did not carry out the had punishment on them, Umar would be angry and would dismiss me. Then Umar flogged them in front of the people, but he shaved their heads inside his house. And the usual procedure was to shave the head at the same time as flogged in front of the people. Then he received a letter from Umar ibn al-Khattab rebuking him for not shaving their heads in front of the people, in which he said, "You flogged Abdurrahman inside your house, and you shaved his head inside your house, although you knew that this was against my wishes. Abdurrahman is one of the men under your authority, and you should treat him as you would treat as you would treat any other Muslim. But you said he is the son of the Caliph, although you know that I do not compromise for anyone with regard to a duty that is owed to Allah Jalla Jalaluhu." Other complaints were also made against Amr during his governorship. Some of them came from his Muslim troops, and some came from the Egyptians, which led Umar radiallahu anhu to summon Amr ibn As on several occasions to rebuke him and sometimes to punish him for what he had done. An example of that was when one of the Egyptians complained that a son of Amr ibn al-As had struck him with a whip, which led Umar bin al-Khattab to summon Amr and his son. He then commanded the Egyptians to settle the score with the son of Amr ibn al-As, and he said to him, "If you had hit his father Amr, meaning Amr, we would not have stopped you." Then Umar turned to Amr ibn al-As and spoke his famous words, and I quote, "When did you enslave people whose mothers bore them freely?" End quote. Another incident which comes under this heading was when one of the soldiers complained about Amr ibn al-As, who had occurred or accused him of hypocrisy. Umar sent a letter ordering that Amr should be made to sit before the people and be whipped by this man if the testimony of witnesses proved that what this soldier said was in fact true. The soldier's complaint was proven by testimony that Amr had accused him of being a hypocrite. The people tried to stop the soldier from hitting Amr and to accept money in compensation instead, but he refused that. When the man stood by Amr to hit him, he said, "Is there anyone who will stop me from hitting you?" Amr said, "No, go ahead with what you have been commanded to do." He said, "I let you off." 3.2.3 Complaints against Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, the governor of Basra. It was narrated from Jarir ibn Abdullah al-Bajali that a man who had a loud voice and was very tough with the enemy in battle was with Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. They got some booty and Abu Musa gave him part of his share, but he insisted on having it all. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiallahu anhu gave him 20 lashes and shaved his head. The man gathered up his hair and went to Umar ibn al-Khattab and entered to meet him. Jarir said, "I was the closest of the people to Umar. He took out his hair and threw it at Umar's chest. Then he said, 'Were it not for the hellfire?' Umar said, 'That's right. Were it not for the hellfire?' He said, 'O Amir al-Mu'mineen, I had a loud voice and I was very tough with the enemy in battle.' And he told him his story. He then said, 'Abu Musa gave me 20 lashes and shaved my head, and he thinks that no one can settle the score with him.' Umar said, 'If all the people were as firm as this man, that would be dearer to me than all the booty that Allah has granted us.' Umar wrote to Abu Musa al-Ash'ari saying, 'Peace be upon you, so and so has told me such and such. If you did that before a group of people, then I urge you to sit before a group of people so that he may settle the score with you. If you did that with no people around, then I urge you to sit where there is no people around and let him settle the score with you.' The man came and the people said to him, 'Let him off.' He said, 'No, by Allah, I will not let him off for the sake of any man.' When Abu Musa al-Ash'ari sat for him to settle the score, the man raised his head and looked up at the heavens. Then he said, 'O Allah, I have let him off.' It was narrated that Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu said, 'We were with Umar on a journey when he saw a man rushing. He said, "This man is looking for us." The man came and wept. And Umar wept and he asked, "What is the matter with you?" He said, "O Amir al-Mu'mineen, I drank alcohol and Abu Musa hit me and blackened my face and paraded me before the people and told the people not to sit with me. I thought of taking my sword and striking Abu Musa with it, or of coming to you and asking you to send me to a land where I am not known, or of going to live in the land of, or I'm going to go live in the land of shirk." Umar wept and said, "I would not like you to go and live in a land of shirk, even if I had such and such in return." And he said, "If you are one of those who drink alcohol, then the people drank alcohol during the Jahiliyyah." Then Umar wrote to Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, saying, "So and so came to me and told me such and such. When this letter of mine reaches you, tell the people to sit with him and to mix with him. If he repents, then accept his testimony." And he gave him some clothes and ordered that he be given 200 dirhams. According to another report, he said, "So and so, the son of so and so from Banu Tamim, has told me such and such. By Allah, if you do that again, I will certainly blacken your face and parade you before the people. If excuse me, you want to know whether I mean what I say, then do it again and tell the people to eat with him and sit with him, and if he repents, then accept his testimony." And Umar gave him a suit of clothes and a mount and gave him 200 dirhams. The story shows us how keen Umar was that none of his governors should overstep the mark in carrying out had punishments on sinners. 3.2.4 The complaints of the people of Homs against Sa'id ibn Amir. Khalid ibn Madan said, "Umar ibn al-Khattab appointed Sa'id ibn Amir al-Jumahi over us in Homs. When Umar came to Homs, he said, 'O people of Homs, how do you find your governor?' And they complained about him. The people of Homs were known as the Little Kufa because of their complaints about their governors. They said, 'We have 4 complaints about him. He does not come out to us until late in the day.' He said, 'This is a serious matter. What else?' They said, 'He does not respond to anyone at night.' Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu said, 'This is a serious matter as well. What else?' They said, 'There is one day in the month when he does not come out to us at all.' He said, 'This is a serious matter. What else there is?' They said, 'Sometimes he passes out.' Umar gathered them and him together and said, 'O Allah, do not prove me wrong in my view of him this day.' Then he began to judge the matter. He asked them in front of him, 'What is your complaint against him?' They said, 'He does not come out to us until late in the day.' Umar asked, 'What do you say?' Sa'id said, 'By Allah, I did not want to mention it. My family has no servant, so I make dough and wait for it to rise. Then I bake my bread, then I do wudu, then come out to them.' Umar asked, 'What is your complaint against him?' They said, 'He does not respond to anyone at night.' Umar said, 'What do you say?' Sa'id said, 'By Allah, I did not want to mention it. I have set aside the day for them and the night for Allah.' Umar then asked, 'What is your complaint against him?' They said, 'There is one day in the month when he does not come out to us at all.' Umar asked, 'What do you say?' Sa'id said, 'I have no servant to wash my garment for me, and I have no garment other than this one. So I wait for it to dry, then I put it on and come out to them at the end of the day.' Umar asked, 'What is your complaint against him?' They said, 'Sometimes he passes out.' Umar asked, 'What do you say?' Sa'id said, 'I witnessed the killing of Qubayb al-Ansari in Mecca when Quraysh cut his flesh and tied him to a tree trunk and said, "Would you like Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam to be in your place?" He said, "By Allah, I would not like to be with my family. I would not like to be with my family and my children and see Muhammad pricked by a even thorn." Then he called out, O Muhammad, whenever I remember that day and how I felt to help him at the time when I was a mushrik and did not believe in Allah the Almighty, I think that Allah will never forgive me for that sin. Then I pass out. Umar said, Praise be to Allah who has not proved my instinct wrong. He sent him with 1,000 dinars and said, Use it to pay yourself. And he Said distributed it instead. 3.2.5 Dismissal of an agent who made fun of one of the people. Qais ibn Abi Hazim radiallahu anhu narrated that Umar bin al-Khattab employed a man of the Ansar who stayed with the leader of the people of Al-Hira, Amir ibn Hayyan ibn Maqila. He brought him food and drink and whatever he wanted. Then he, the Ansari, started to joke a great deal. He called him and whipped his he called him and wiped his hand on his beard, on the man's beard. Then Amir ibn Hayyan went to Umar and said, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, I served Khosrows and Caesar, and I was never intimidated in the manner in which I was intimidated under your reign. Umar asked, How is that? He said, Your agent stayed with me, and when we brought him food and drink and whatever he wanted, then he started to joke a great deal. He called me and wiped his hands on my beard. Umar sent for him and said, What is this? He brought you fruit and drink and whatever you wanted, then you called him and wiped your hand on his beard. By Allah, or not that I do not want to set a precedent, I would have left a single hair on your beard without pulling it out. Now go, for by Allah you will never do any work for me. 3.3 Punishments that were carried out on governors at the time of Umar bin al-Khattab. Very important. As a result of Umar's watching his governors, he noticed some mistakes that the governors made, so he disciplined and punished them for these mistakes. His methods of disciplining the governors varied according to the situation and what the Caliph thought best. Among the most important methods he used were the following. Settling scores with governors. Umar used to say, I have not sent my governors to beat you or to take your wealth. Rather, I have sent them to you to teach you your religion and sunnah. Whoever is treated differently than that, let him refer it to me. But for by the one in whose hand is my sword, Jalla Jalaluhu, I will settle the score for him. Umar did not stop at official announcements which warned the governors against aggression towards the people. Rather, he put that into practice, as we have seen above, when complaints were made against Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anhuma, dismissing a governor as a result of his error. Umar dismissed governors as a result of their falling into error on which he did not approve. He dismissed one of his governors when he interfered in matters that did not concern him with regards to his troops. He was sent to lead an army. When he reached them, he said, I want you to tell me of every sin that you commit. So they started to confess their sins to him. News of that reached Umar bin Khattab, and he said, What is wrong with him? May he be doomed that he goes and uncovers, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has concealed. By Allah, he will never do work for me again. Umar also got angry with one of his governors when he heard some of his poetry in which he mentioned wine, so he dismissed him for that. Destroying part of the governor's dwellings. This was done in case there was some transgression. Umar was keen that the governor's houses should be without gates at all. No gates. Or gatekeepers. No gates, no gatekeepers. When he heard that Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas had put a gate on his house, he sent Muhammad ibn Maslama to him and told him to burn that gate. The reason for that gate was that the market was close to his house and the loud voices in the market were disturbing Sa'd. So he put up a gate to block the noise of the people in the market. News of Saad's house and its gate reached Umar, and he heard that people were calling it Saad's palace. So he called Muhammad ibn al-Maslama and sent him to Kufa. He said, go to the palace and burn its gate, then come back straight away. So he went to Kufa, where he bought some firewood, took it to the palace, and burned the gate. Ibn Shib narrated that Umar appointed Mujasha ibn Mas'ud in charge of some work, and he heard that his wife kept buying new furnishings. Umar wrote to him and said, from the slave of Allah, the commander of the faithful, to Mujasha Ibn Mas'ud, peace be upon you, I have heard that Al-Qudayra keeps buying new furnishings. When this letter of mine reaches you, I urge you not to put it down until you have torn down her wall hangings. The letter reached him when there were some people sitting with him. He looked at the letter, and the people realized that something upsetting had come to him. He took the letter in his hand, and then he said to the people, get up. So they got up, and by Allah, they did not know why he was making them get up. He took them to the door of his house. Then he went in and was met by his wife, who could see something bad in his expression. She asked, what is the matter with you? He said, go away, I am angry with you. So the woman went away, and he said to the people, come in. The people went in, and he said, let each of you take what is nearest to him in this direction and tear it down. So they all tore it down and threw it on the ground, and the letter was still in his hand. He had not put it down yet. When Umar ibn Al-Khattab radiallahu anhu visited Syria, Yazid ibn Abi Sufyan invited him to come and eat with him. When Umar entered the house, he saw some wall hangings. Umar started to tear them up, saying, woe to you! Do you dress walls with material that could be used by people to shield themselves from the heat and cold? 3.3.4 Disciplining by hitting. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu used this method and was famous for carrying his stick which he struck with. He struck some of the governors because of some deeds that they had committed. During Umar's visit to Syria, he entered the house of one of his governors and found that they had too many possessions. Umar got angry and started hitting him with his stick. Also, during Umar's visit to Syria, some of the governors came to meet him. The first ones to meet him were Yazid ibn Abi Sufyan and Abu Ubaidah, then Khalid ibn al-Walid, who came riding horses, and they all came riding horses and wearing fine garments that did not befit the Mujahideen. Umar dismounted, picked up some stones, and started throwing them at them, and said, how quickly you have changed your ways. Are you receiving me in this manner? It is only 2 years ago that you started having your fill. By Allah, even if you were to do this after 200 years, I would still replace you with someone else. They said, O Amirul Mu'mineen, this is just outward appearance. We still have our weapons on us. He said, fine then. Demoting a governor to a shepherd. Umar ibn al-Khattab used this method with one of his governors. Ibn Shibr narrated that Umar radiallahu anhu appointed Iyad ibn Ghanam as governor of Syria. Then he heard that he had acquired a bath, a hammam of chose an inner circle. He wrote to him of calls an inner circle. So I suppose he wrote to him telling him to come to him. He came, and Umar refused to meet him for 3 days. Then he gave him permission to enter. He called for a woolen jubba and said to him, put this on. And he gave him a shepherd's bag and 300 sheep and said, call them. So he called them, and when he had gone some distance, he said, come back. So he came back running. He said, do such and such, go. And he went. Then, when he had gone far away, he called out to him, O Iyad, come back. He kept sending him away and calling him back until he started to sweat in the jubba. He said, bring the sheep to me on such and such a day. He brought them to him on that day, and Umar came out and said, draw water for them. So he drew water and filled the trough and gave them water. Then he said, call them and bring them on such and such a day. He kept doing that for 2 or 3 months had passed. Then he called him and said, so you chose an inner circle and acquired a hammam. Will you do it again? He said, no. Umar said, go back to your job. The result of this disciplinary punishment is that after that Iyad became one of the best of Umar radiallahu anhu's governors. Take away some of the governor's wealth. This was another means of disciplining the governor. This measure was applied as a precautionary measure at the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab, when Umar felt that the wealth of some of the governors was increasing too much, and he feared that the governors had acquired some of this wealth because of their position. Ibn Taymiyyah commented on this action of Umar and said, similarly, showing favor to the governors in buying, renting, investing, irrigating, farming, and so on is a kind of gift giving. Hence, Umar ibn al-Khattab took away part of the wealth of his governors in cases where there was no room for suspicion of misconduct because of their high level of virtue and righteous commitment. The reason why he did that was that it was a favor that was known to them because of their position and because this is what was dictated by the situation. Because he was a just ruler and who shared out wealth equally. Among the governors from whom Umar ibn Khattab took some of their wealth was Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, Abu Huraira, and Amr ibn As. May Allah be pleased with all of them. Umar would record his governor's wealth when he appointed them. Then he would take half of any increase, and in some cases he took all of the increase. He also took away some of the wealth of some of the governor's relatives if he thought that was justified. He took half of Abu Bakra's wealth, and Abu Bakra objected, saying, I did not do any work for you. Umar said, but your brother is in charge of the Baytul Mal, and he has been lending you money with which you use to engage in trade. Inshallah, we will stop here on page number 101 at the very bottom of that. And proceed into the second volume. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وتبارك اسم ربك وتعالى جدك ولا إله غيرك ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.